Alright, so today I want to talk about what is a supranational organization. What is a supranational organization? And all it is an organization in which three or more countries they form an alliance for cultural, economic, or military reasons. And it's usually economic or military reasons. So all it is a couple of countries, three or more, cooperating to improve their economy or to improve their defense or security. And so it's created so nations can reach a goal that they may not be able to reach independently. Couldn't reach independently. So here we are. We're going to go over a few examples real quickly. Let's start with an easy supranational organization, FIFA. Okay, and a lot of people will be familiar with FIFA and what FIFA is. It's basically the governing body for soccer. Alright, so FIFA is in charge of rules that deal with soccer. They're in charge of putting on events. They're in charge of organizing the World Cup. Alright, so this is a very basic example of a supranational organization. Alright, so the next example of a supranational organization I want to talk about is the United Nations. This is probably the most important one we're going to talk about. Certainly the biggest one. It's got nearly 200 members. Nearly. Oops, can't spell members. Alright, this building here is the headquarters. This is HQ. Alright, and it's located in New York in Manhattan. Alright, so at least once a year here, the United Nations meets and they discuss issues going on throughout the world, but they can meet anytime something arises, an issue they might have to deal with. Alright, so what is the purpose of the supranational organization? Because remember, a supranational organization has to have at least three nations, three countries involved, and it has to have a goal. Their main goal is global security. Alright, so when conflict goes on around the world, the UN will come and discuss it. They'll say, alright, do we need to get involved? The main goal is to prevent World War III. Right? We don't want World War III. I'll X that out. Alright. The United Nations was actually created after World War II in response to World War II and in order to prevent another global conflict. One of the features I want to talk about is the Security Council. And again, the United Nations was created after World War II, so the Security Council is 5 members, and the members were basically the countries that were in power, the victorious nations, basically the superpowers following World War II. So the 5 members include the United States, Russia, France, the UK, United Kingdom, and China. Okay, and these 5 members, they have what's called veto power. Veto power. So if anything happens in the United Nations, they decide, all right, there's a conflict in Syria, we need to go in there, we need to take care of it. If one of these countries says, no, I don't think we should do that, if Russia, for example, says no, then the whole thing is vetoed. Alright, so this Security Council acts as a mechanism to keep any one country from having too much power, but it also, in many instances, can keep things from getting done, because one member can veto the whole operation. Alright, so that's the Security Council. Alright, the next supranational organization I'd like to talk about is the European Union. Alright, the European Union has 28 member states, or member countries, and its purpose is to improve business / trade / the economies of all the member countries involved. So the idea was initially when the European Union was getting started that countries that trade together, they're going to become dependent on one another, interdependent, and they're less likely to get in conflict. So the European Union was a great idea, especially after World War II. If all these European Union countries start trading with each other, start doing business with each other, they're going to be much less likely to have a conflict with each other. So that makes sense to me. Alright, so this here is a map of the European Union. You can see that most European countries are involved, 28 of them in fact. Norway is not, Switzerland is not. Croatia actually is. It's the 28th member state of the European Union. Alright, so one of the more important features of the European Union, one of the more important things they've accomplished is what's called the euro. And the euro is money, it equals money. Okay, in America, in the US, you got the dollar. In Mexico, you have the peso. I don't know the symbol for peso. But in Europe, you have the euro, and most of Europe uses the euro. Not all of it, but most of it. Okay, 332 million use it. 17 of the 28 countries use it. So not all of them use it, but most of them do. And the euro makes it easier to do business cross-border. Alright, and that goes along with the goal of the European Union of improving the trade and improving the economies of each member country of the European Union. Alright, so the next example I'd like to talk about of a supranational organization is something called OPEC, OPEC, and it stands for Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. So it's a bunch of oil exporters. Okay, and it started with these countries in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran. Okay, Indonesia is actually not part of OPEC anymore. And there's other countries involved too, also in Africa. And you got Venezuela and Ecuador over here in South America. But the main goal, the purpose, is to ensure best profit for their oil, right? Because that's their interest. That's what they're interested in doing. They export oil. They want to make sure they get the best profit they can out of it. Some more quick examples of supranational organizations. This one is ASEAN, and that stands for Association of Southeast Asian Nations, I believe. Okay, and it's an agreement to remove tariffs for economic benefit. So if Thailand and Vietnam want to trade with each other, okay, they're not going to have import-export taxes, and this is going to encourage trade among these nations. So this is an economic supranational organization. All right, the next one we're going to talk about real quick is NAFTA, and it stands for North American Free Trade Agreement. So it's the United States, you can see here, the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. And it's basically the same as ASEAN. It removes restrictive tariffs, so it removes taxes between the United States, Mexico, and Canada, and that's to encourage trade, okay, and be an economic benefit. So this again is an economic supranational organization. The final example, again, you're seeing a theme here. This is economic. Okay, and this one is called Mercosur. And I'm not exactly sure why it's called Mercosur, actually. Somebody should look that up. Maybe I will. And this is the same thing, right? They remove restrictive tariffs, taxes, and it's for economic benefit. All right, it's to encourage trade between Brazil and Argentina. And this was Latin America's regional response to NAFTA and ASEAN. All right, so to conclude, what is a supranational organization? It's 3 or more countries, and they form an alliance or a union for economic or military reasons, sometimes cultural reasons, and they have to have a goal. They need to reach a goal that they may not be able to reach independently. All right, examples include the United Nations, the European Union, OPEC, NATO, ASEAN, NAFTA, and Mercosur.